The last video in the series concerns the job search, and this can be done at the end of your undergraduate, end of master's, end of PhD, end of postdoc, or you can just be doing it continuously while you're, say you enroll in a PhD program, you're just continuously applying to jobs, you get an offer and you leave. Stuff like that happens. So the point is that the job search can take place for any length or for a long period of time at any point during your educational career. So on average, I think the job search is said to take about 12 to 24 months. I don't hear too often the 24-month marker, but I think between 6 and 12 months is if you're diligently applying to say at least 10 jobs a week, I think 6 to 12 months is a good time frame. But you really have no control over when things like this happen. You might be applying to a field that's going through a dry spell, or you might be applying to an oversaturated field, and there's not much that puts your resume ahead of others. So, as an undergraduate, in late July before your senior year, this is when you start applying for jobs, and you specifically choose this time because a lot of companies are posting their job listings to get these graduating seniors, and they tend to happen like right at the end of July. So you think, all right, I'll start school, and mid to late September I'll start doing it, and then things get a little bit busy, you don't start applying to jobs till November. You've already missed a big interview storm. So you definitely want to be starting and plan to be starting in late July. So for your job search, you're going to need several documents. The first is your resume, and the second is your cover letter. And these are, the cover letter is very important because that is what it's like the personal statement for a grad school application. You're personally appealing to the employer and saying, this is why I'm a good fit, this is why I should work here. And then with your resume, that tends to be what it goes over with the HR professionals, but what makes you stick out will also be front and center in the resume itself, and you need to find ways to put that front and center. So with resumes and cover letters, you can I encourage you to see career services on this, but more importantly, I think you should be showing this to actual working professionals and getting their feedback on your resume. Recruiters are a really good one for this too. I have not had good luck with career services and their suggestions. They've looked at my resume and CV before and said, oh, we think this is totally fine. And then I showed it to several industry professionals, and they said, oh, no, this is not fine. You need to be doing a bunch of things in different order. But yeah, I encourage you to try a bunch of things out. You should be editing your resume every couple of weeks or so to change things around and try to communicate better. So the next things you're going to need for your job search are 3 references. These don't need to be as intense as the letters of recommendation for grad school. In fact, if you're also applying to grad school, these can be the people also writing your letters. But occasionally, the job people or the HR representatives or the hiring manager will reach out to your references, call them, and ask them some questions. So you want to have 3 good references in case that happens. I don't think out of over 1,000 applications and 2 job searches I ever had my references called, but it does happen, so you do want people who are going to speak well for you. You also need your job history. So you want to have the place, the dates, and a small written paragraph on what were your key duties and what were your key accomplishments. You can copy paste this from your resume if you want, or you can write this out in full text. I preferred to do that because it allowed me to better copy and paste these descriptions into the online applications. You want a list of up to 50 skills. These would be specific skills you've gained, say, in the laboratory or professionally. And these can be fitted to specifically to the job you're applying to. But if you, say, have a lot of experimental experience, you can detail where you have a lot of specific general skills. And then finally, you need an Excel document that's going to track all of your job logins. In this document, this is where I keep my information on my references, the job history, and the skills. And this makes it very easy to go from online platform to online platform, and job applications that may have taken me 20 minutes doing it all from scratch instead take me about 8. And at some point it will become a numbers game. So, where to find the jobs? There's a number of job sites out there, but I think first and foremost you should reach out to your network and see what's available with them. And this is really where it benefits to have this nice large network. If you have a smaller network, there's fewer people to talk to, and then once you reach that point of the job search, you're ostensibly applying to as many jobs as you can blindly. And you're less likely to get an interview from positions like that. So first and foremost, resort to your network. And then regarding online platforms, currently LinkedIn is, I think, preferred by employers. This is 2019, so that might change in the future. Indeed has a lot of job listings, and the two of them together have customizable regular emails that they will send you for certain search terms and locations, so you should definitely set those up. I've been recommended Stella by several of the employers. I never signed up for that, or I didn't have the chance to, but apparently it's one of those skilled online networks. Monster is an older network before Indeed got real popular. And there's other places like Brass Ring and so on and so forth that and any other future website that's cropping up. So as you're getting into your job search, and maybe you're watching this video a couple of years from now, definitely check with people who'd be in the know, like people actually applying to jobs right now, where they're finding these positions. Now, ideally, when it comes to job applications, you want to be applying to about 50 to 100 per month. And make no mistake, that is a lot of work. You might be thinking, oh, in the digital age, I just need to find quick ways to apply. And there definitely are quick applications, but you actually spend a significant amount of time finding positions, and a number of website platforms are actually kind of time consuming, and some of these will ask you very specific questions, almost as if almost like background check type questions, and it seems to be a bit extreme for at least an initial application, but yet it will be there. So I'd say spend an hour a day applying to jobs, and if you do that, you'll probably apply to over 100 in a month. It doesn't seem like it's that much, but yeah, that's what that will take. Now, after you submit the application, again, you can reach out to your network and see if, you can mention that you use someone in your network as a reference, or you can ask them prior to applying, or you can ask them for more specifics about, this is how I approach it. I'll ask them for specifics about this job. It's like, what could you tell me that might not be written in the job description? And then try to work in a little bit later. It's like, oh, I'd appreciate it if you recommended me or spoke on my behalf. It doesn't hurt. Because really you're trying to get into that interview pool. Not necessarily getting the job offer. You want to be getting preferably an on-site interview, but a phone interview is the next best thing. So when employers are evaluating your application, they use a number of proxies to determine how good a candidate you are. So first and foremost, they will go by your references, and not the references that you're putting down, but people who are speaking on your behalf. Again, this is the best way to get yourself in the interview room, having someone on the inside who's speaking for you. And then second is actually on your resume, it will be your job experience and how well you communicate that. If you're applying for an industrial job, then obviously having industrial experience sets you apart. If you're applying for an industrial job after grad school and you only have academic experience, then it's a little more difficult, and they'll look at your research experience to see how well it matches what they're doing. In addition to that, those are big ones that are in your control, and also the way that you have formatted your resume, the way that you've written your cover letter. These are things that you should focus on. There are a number of things at this point that are out of your control that are still used to determine how good a candidate you are, whether fairly or unfairly. Some of those would be school rank. If you go to, say, Texas A&M, employers will probably give you the benefit of the doubt more than they would someone who went to UTSA. Your GPA, in lieu of professional experience for undergraduates, is viewed as really important. But there's a number of other companies that will have minimum GPAs. They tend to not care about it as much, but if you say have a 3.2 but you have an otherwise good application, they might say, oh, well, this all looks good, but we only take people with a 3.5 or above. Okay, well, I think that's a bad decision on their part, but if that's the way they do it, that's the way they do it. That's out of your control. Well, unless you're actively taking classes now, try to do as well in your classes as you can. Published papers are used as proxies. Not as much, especially for industrial work, because they tend not to publish, but some places do, and other places will look at them and read them and try to get a feel for how good a candidate you are. And there's a number of other things that float on down, because when the employers are looking through the applicant pool, they have some superstars that they definitely want to talk to, and they might have some people who they definitely don't want to talk to. And then they'll have a huge chunk in the middle of people that aren't their experiences seem almost indistinguishable. They're in different areas. They all seem like smart overachievers. So what standards do you have to hold to tell them apart? And it can get kind of arbitrary sometimes. It depends on what the HR staff is looking at, what the hiring manager are looking at, and whether or not the average of 6 seconds on your resume gives them something that they find interesting. So the job process, that's how you're used to be judged to get you in the interview room. So the whole process is that you usually submit this application online. A vast majority of them are online. At this point, HR will probably have a computer screening, because a lot of people, maybe 50 to 200 people, are applying to this job. And the computer screening will pair people up based on usually keywords. And you can read up on how these keyword searches go. And one of the recommendations is that you copy paste a bunch of job listings and then put them into this giant document that will pick out common words and make them bigger or smaller. I forget the name of it, but that's a good way to find it. But as you read enough of these job descriptions, you'll get a feel of what things they tend to value. I know collaborative is a big keyword right now. All right, so you have the HR computer screening. Not every company will do that, but many will. And then after that, you will have an HR phone screening, where an HR professional is actually looking at your resume. This is not a science professional, so they don't necessarily understand everything that's on your resume, but they're checking for broad strokes. And then they will usually call you and ask you some broad-based questions, and they try to get a feel for how you communicate. Ask some general questions like, this job is located in Columbus, Ohio. Are you okay moving to Columbus, Ohio? That kind of thing. They may ask you to take a personality inventory. I've had a few places do that. And they may ask you about your availability. When would you be able to start? Because believe it or not, some people aren't able to start immediately. Some people have, say, kids in school, and they have to say, well, it's September and I can't move until January. So that kind of thing. So in my experience, the HR phone screening isn't as difficult as getting past the computer screening, and obviously you never really know when you get past that unless you get the rejection email. But I've had pretty good luck with phone screenings. I'd say about 80% of the time, 90% of the time for me, they translate into a phone interview, but not always. So you'll definitely want to work on your interviewing skills and things that you can impress upon them. Making a personal connection is really big, like saying, values-wise, this is why I want this job, and not being totally robotic. Having them view you as a real person with real ambitions, that kind of thing. The next step is a phone interview with the hiring manager, and this may or may not have other people on the line as well. I've done panel interviews where they've got 3 people on a conference call, and this is largely technical, where they ask you to describe your technical experiences. They might ask you some behavioral questions as well. And the HR will do this too. And on that topic, before I continue too much with this, the behavioral questions, a lot of them you can give stock cookie cutter answers to, and you should definitely look up common questions and have prepared answers. The more you do these, the more you'll see which questions are asked more commonly. Like, what are your strengths? What's your biggest strength? What's your biggest weakness? What's your biggest success? Describe a time when you had when you had to resolve a conflict, this kind of thing. But don't prepare for everything, because if you just launch off cookie cutter answers, you sound very robotic, and a little bit of stumbling makes you look a lot more human, and this is actually to your benefit. So that's the phone interview with the manager. They will get a feel for you personally, but as I said, this is largely an inventory on your technical skills and how well you communicate that and how well they think it matches. So at this point, they will make a short list of candidates. It might be as short as 1, it might be as large as 5, and they will invite them for on-site interviews. The on-site interview is probably the most important part of this whole process. And ironically, it has almost nothing to do with your technical skills, because at that point, they have verified that everyone they're bringing on site is technically competent to do this job. So how they're really basing their hiring decision is largely on how you personally fit within their team from a cultural perspective, from the way that you communicate, from the kinds of problems that you've done before. It's like, are you more of a people person, or are you more of an analytical person, likes to sit at your desk? Are you hands-on, or are you more of a manager, hands-off type? This kind of thing. And this can be pretty tough, because at this point you're putting yourself on the line, very, like, you yourself very personally on the line, and getting rejected after an on-site interview, it can feel really harsh, because they got to know you personally, and when they're turning you down because of who you are with respect to their team. So do what you need to do to cope with the disappointment of that if it comes to it. But yeah, that's the on-site interview, and after the on-site interview will come either a job offer or a rejection. And oftentimes, if they reject you at the on-site interview part, they said they really like you, so they'll really encourage you to apply for future jobs. And that's a great idea, because now you've met and interacted with a bunch of people who actually work for that company, and so you've expanded your network to a bunch of people on the inside. I had one HR manager specifically who really liked me. They didn't pick me for the position, but he kept encouraging me every time I saw a position that I thought I was qualified for, to contact him, use him as this man on the inside. He said, and this is a fantastic contact. So just because you're interviewing doesn't mean it's not an opportunity to grow that network of yours. But yeah, after that, you get the job offer, you sign the job offer, you go through the whole process of relocating if you need to, and you start working. And as I said, this whole process, I've seen people get a job within a couple of months, and I've seen other people try to get a job for a year and a half. International students tend to have a little more of a difficult time, especially after graduate school, because they need to find a company willing to sponsor them, and not every company is willing. But yeah, besides that, good luck. It's very tricky, and again, everyone's got a different style with it, so I encourage you to learn about those different styles and see where it works best for you.